so I've been a cultivator for, about 15 years now. I'm in Sacramento, California, and did the not so legal days here in California. It went legal. I actually went back to school at UC Davis and got introduced to LEDs there,
Okay.
which was really, really cool. Once I graduated, I kind of had an option to go back towards cannabis or go into, the regular life, whatever you want to call it, a 9 to 5. And I couldn't do that. So I went and got a job at Alien Labs and Connected here in Sacramento. And
Okay.
I was a part of their R&D team. So I was at their R&D facility, and basically, within 2 weeks of me starting, they were like, hey, we're going to do inter-canopy and under-canopy trials. And so right away, I was doing under-canopy, inter-canopy trials at scale, like off the rip. And I was one of the naysayers. I'd like, as a cultivator, you're like, I don't want to worry about one more thing. Like under canopy is just another thing to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that lasted until we got the yield results from our first run. And then I was like I think it was
Wow.
Christmas Eve 2020.
Yeah.
And we got the yield numbers back, and like that night I rolled a joint and just sat there and smoked and like stared into the abyss, like the dark abyss. I was like, I can't believe we just did that, just like completely breaking like any yield like record that you would ever think was fathomable, especially at 2020 times, so
That's the thing. Like when I first heard about canopy lighting, same thing. I'm like, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's more of a, in a commercial workflow setting, like you are on, I mean, we're talking about being every day, exactly what you have to do, and you have to know what you're doing that day so it doesn't, waterfall into the next 3-4 weeks, even 3-4 months. So, upsetting workflow and introducing something new it's very tedious in like in a commercial setting. So, a lot of cultivators are like, dude, I don't want one more thing. And then like you get the yield results back, and then you realize that growing with under canopy is like way more fun anyway.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a fun factor along with, yield and quality increases.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
So
that's how I got into it.
that's a little bit about Tim.
Yeah.
You are the owner, CEO of Faven.
Yes.
Incredible.
Just
And that's fantastic. So when you're running an under canopy light, there's a few changes automatically. When we put these in, I'm like, what height do I want them? I got the 12-inch.
Yeah.
I think that the 8-inch stand, I know that you've got an adjustable stand also.
Yeah.
But if you're buying the fixed stand, the 8-inch must be for seriously sea of green.
So we actually don't have the fixed stands anymore. They were kind of like a temporary hold while we worked through like a really good model for adjustable.
Yeah.
But our adjustables go from 8, 10 to 12 inches. And 8-inch is really applicable in like double tier setups. So if you're a multi-tier operator, and 8-inch is a great place to start. If you have low ceilings in your side project, that's a great place to start as well. If you're growing plants that are basically under 4 feet, 8-inch is a really good place to start.
Yeah.
If you're growing larger plants, we want to project that light into the canopy as much as possible, really get that meeting of top light and bottom light in the center of the canopy. So we want to raise that up a little bit more to about the 12-inch mark.
Okay. I'm running 12-inch, and
Cool.
I like where the light is. It's right near the bottom of the trim. It's not burning any leaves.
Yeah.
It's not hot at all.
No.
But it's definitely an increase in lumens. It's typically the darkest spot of the crop, right? So we're adding light. I know this to be true. Right? Basically, fuck your popcorn, because you're getting mid-size, if not large, nuggets down low.
Yeah. So it's really, removing any bees in your harvest. A typical like average percentage of smalls for, somebody operating is between, usually 10 to 15%, sometimes 20%, depending on the genetic.
Yeah.
We really want to see that down closer to 5% with under canopy. You're still going to have some, and some genetics are going to have a little more than others, and some's going to have absolutely zero smalls. Anything that's like sherbet leaning, like sunset sherbet, absolutely throws just golf balls at the bottom. You know, so some genetics different than others, but yeah, we're really removing those low value SKUs and making sure people's, you know, making sure these cultivators are getting top dollar for every piece of product they produce because you can't survive on, you know, $500 pounds of smalls. You know, that doesn't pay the
No,
bills.
no, no. Smalls, like genuinely, I mean, smalls, I don't understand why they go for so little because you're buying lumber. It's identically, it's the same plant and
Yeah,
historically less money in the market. It
yeah,
really should, but it does. And
yeah.
this is a great way of limiting that. Couldn't agree more. So we know there's an increase. Typically, what do you see for timeout increase?
So typical increase first run, about 20% is pretty typical for us.
Yeah,
And that is in HPS or LED setup. There really isn't that big of a difference between the numbers.
yeah,
Obviously, those two light sources are completely different, but you know, you're adding light to your canopy, so you should have a yield increase because light and yield are very tightly coupled.
exactly.
What's interesting is we also see a very similar yield result when a customer is running LEDs up top and they actually reduce their intensity up top and add Favens. Those numbers are still very, very similar. It's still around the 20% mark. So it's really interesting that the plant actually prefers to have a more
Balance.
holistic lighting approach than just top-down lighting.
Okay. So even if even if adding, say, for example, in this garden, we had basically 1,000 watts of
Yeah.
LED. If I dim those lights by 20%, I'd be compensating for that increase in power.
Yeah, you basically have the same amount of power
Yeah.
being used, but you're actually still getting more bang for that. Like so the metric to really start paying attention to is yield per watt or grams per watt of
Yeah.
lighting used. That's the real driver of like what's your cost and how much are you making? Because we have to make money in order to keep growing, unfortunately, or else it would be great if we could just grow for the passion of it, but unfortunately we have to make money and stay in business. So, you know, what's your grams per watt? That's probably the new like grams per square foot really tells you a lot, but grams per watt tells you what your energy consumption is, what your cogs are, you know, a portion of your cogs compared to, you know, your yield. But yeah, 20% off the rip. As you start to get under canopy dialed in for that genetic, for that workflow, for that facility, that number creeps up substantially. We get numbers back all the time of like people just being like, dude, this like I got one back from Moonbow. Somebody was running Moonbow, an archive genetic, and was like, dude, this one was 46%. And I was like, yeah, that's not surprising. Like any Skittles leaning or very any genetics that have lateral branching, instead of going vertical, they kind of go, you know, lateral, just absolutely throw down with under canopy. No matter what, you're gonna have a yield increase, but like some genetics are just predisposed to just absolutely dumping when it comes to adding under canopy.
Yeah. I've heard some obscene yields. I mean,
Yeah. We don't like to talk about them because people are like, you're lying. And I'm like, no,
they
I
don't,
swear.
don't believe it. You hear, 60, 80% double the yield.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's good to be true. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of there's not a lot of products that see 100% ROI on your money. So you don't want to. Me as a person that's selling these lights, I don't want to tell people you're going to see some drastically
Yeah.
huge number,
Yeah.
right? Just because I'd way rather under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
But on average, I think is really safe to say 20%, which 20% more yield and limiting the amount of effort work. And that's the other really big part of it, right? So most cultivators, in my opinion, overcrowd. And I think even the experts, they're just putting too many plants on a table. They're growing them too big. They're not flipping them soon enough. They're growing way too much lumber. 3 feet of lumber at the bottom, I think is such a waste of manpower and being on 18 hours. And we can do better, right? So
Yeah.
my opinion, if you flip sooner, the plant always finds a way to fill that space.
Yep. Yeah, there's an argument to like maintaining growth velocity and when to flip your plants because if you flip your plants at like the right time, they won't need to be over vegged or you won't need to overcrowd them
Yeah.
because you can kind of maintain that growth. So that's something that like I work on with irrigation strategy a lot and under canopy and you can actually control the height of your plants with under canopy as well, you know. So if you're on a double stack or you have low ceilings, it's really nice to be able, it's like another lever you can pull to control the height of your plants. But I agree. I generally, you know, with plant crowding, generally we like to see a reduction in plant count when you add under canopy, and that's really just because, you know, you're no longer under clearing as much. I mean, barely any, depending on the size of your plants. So what that leads to is a little bit of crowding. Like it gets very congested down there. If you're running a high plant count under canopy lights, you've got all these branches that you used to remove. Well, now it's getting very crowded down there. You're limiting airflow. We
Yeah.
never want to do that. We want to have consistent airflow. So if you reduce that plant count, keep those unders on, you're actually going to see a yield increase. You're going to save tons of money on plants, substrates, clones, moms, all that. That's a hard cost straight to your bottom line. So reducing plant count, prioritizing airflow, and you're doing less labor. You're doing more of a strategic deleaf than removing the lower branches. So it's really like, I know it says, I know it sounds way too good to be true. Believe me, I was there. But this is really just the evolution of understanding how to light the plant, you know? So it's just an evolution in lighting and efficiencies at a commercial scale. And even not even a commercial scale. You can have it in your two lighter, whatever. It all works.
When do you recommend you hit the plants under canopy lighting? What stage of growth?
So the intensity isn't as important as the timing. Intensity, there's no race on like increasing the intensity of the light. Ours dimmed down to about 40%. The big idea here is getting light on the lower parts of your plant and those lower bud sites sooner than later. And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to have the top buds and the bottom buds mature at the same rate. So we want to turn those lights on around. I tell cultivators that, you know, between days 5 and 7, your plants are firmly in. They're firmly in flower. You come in every day and they're just ripping. Their growth is exponential every day. That's
Yeah.
a really good time to turn on Favens at a low intensity. And what that does is just warms up your plants to receiving light down there. Now, if you flip very, very tiny plants, you know, if you're flipping at like less than 18 inches or 12 inches,
Yeah.
you can wait a little longer because you don't want to blast them. But if you've got a decently full canopy at day 7, 5 to 7 to 10, wherever in that range, that's a good time to turn them on, let your plants get used to it for a couple days, and then start increasing that intensity just ever so slightly, 5% every other day, 10% every other day. Not a race.
Yeah.
I like to have a very common goal, and it's always cultivar specific and facility specific. But if you can get to 100% intensity by the end of week 3, or like if you can get to 100% intensity by your post stretch strip, like leaf strip, that's a good place to be. So like days 21 to 25 is a really good target to be at.
That's exactly where we are right now. We're,
Oh,
we're
perfect.
and they're in full and they're so between the R8 and the R6,
Yep.
HPS LED, because I know you make two different varieties.
Yep.
What typically see people or companies having the most success? You're an HPS grower. Are you seeing or is it between LED growers and HPS similar experience?
So as I said, like the yield numbers are pretty standard. Doesn't matter R6, R8, HPS, LED. But the idea around the R6 is just a little less red than the R8.
Yeah.
And that's because we're compensating for the lack of full spectrum in an HPS bulb, right? We've got red, orange, and yellow, very, very high levels of those colors in an HPS bulb, and not so much full spectrum. And so we kind of pair that with 60% red, but a little more full spectrum to really
You fill in the
round
gap.
out, really round out that spectrum, right? We call it spectrum balancing. So we're balancing the top light with our under canopy choice.
Great.
Conversely, you've got, you know, Think grows right behind you. Those are about 40% red. Okay. So I'm not going to say they lack in red. That's not the proper term, but full spectrum does a really good job of pushing plant health and yield. But you know, LEDs in general, they kind of lack a little bit of the HPS quality that everybody's used to, especially in these markets, Canada, California, Michigan, anybody who's running a lot of HPS bulbs still. Colorado, Washington, Oregon, basically the West Coast and Michigan and some of Maine. So yeah, you're running the R8 with an LED spectrum up top, and really we're just pulling that color all the way through. We're having a consistent purple color from top to bottom, which
Yeah.
again increases quality, it increases consistency of your bag, it increases your sales velocity because all your stuff is purple, all your product is purple. There's no selling it for a couple $100 less because it's green, right? We have to be purple, we have to be uniform, and that's really what under Canopy, like, yield is going to drive this conversation because that's how people stay in business. But the quality, like the secondary benefits, the reduction in labor, the uniformity, the like you not having to sort the different buds, you know, after you harvest is a really, really huge savings as well, and a boost to
Awesome.
the bottom line.
Dealing with popcorn. Um,
Yeah.
what's next for Faven?
So we have a 2.0. It's called Chroma,
Yeah.
and that's going to be launching in Q2, and that's going to have a spectrum tune between 40% red and 90% red. It's also going to have increased far red capabilities. Excuse me. And so we're really, really excited about that. We've got a bunch in testing right now. We're getting a bunch of good data back about how
So
to manipulate.
spectrum tuning, basically.
Yeah, so spectrum tuning, and it's going to be, you're going to be able to manipulate the red and white balance of the spectrum. And the idea around that is complete control of your final product. Because
Yeah.
there's times in the plant's life where they would like way more red. There's times in the plant life where they would like more full spectrum white light. So we're doing a lot of testing, making sure we've got a solid SOP to release to everybody. And not even an SOP, that's a tough word, just parameters to work within, you know? But it's going to have spectrum tuning, but it's going to be safe spectrum tuning. You're not, like, nothing you can do is going to jack your plants up. This is purely for benefit. So, you know, right now we're really looking into being as red as possible early, and then during like the stretch and putting on the bud sites, right, our stacking, call it the generative first phase, and then switching to more of a bulking, which a lot of cannabinoids, a lot of yield in that bulking time frame. Well, we're looking for more white light for that, so we're switching back to white light, more of a 40%. And then at the end, the last 2 weeks during ripening, really when you want to have that control of what your final product is going to be. Well, if you're in a competitive market or competitive flower market, you need purple flower. We're going to end back at the red spectrum, right? If you're taking, you know, things to fresh frozen, if you're doing rosin, you probably want to keep that white light on there because you're producing more cannabinoids and yield and biomass. So basically you're going to have this control over what your final product is, and you can do that within the same room, you know. So you can have a row that's going to finished flower, your next row can be rosin, your next row after that can be finished flower, and you're going to be able to control each one and get the absolute best outcome that you can with those rows, because we all have to grow a menu now. We can't just grow one genetic. We have to have a full menu within every single room that we drop, or else we're just not competitive on the market.
I don't necessarily disagree. Don't necessarily like. I do like getting to know one plant and learning everything about it, going deep. For
Yeah.
those that know Sacramento, and that is a hot of collaborative monster cultivation. Miami mangoes down there.
Yeah.
There is a lot happening in Sacramento.
Yeah.
It's very, very. How many
We have
square?
2.5 million square feet of cannabis in District 6 alone.
Yeah, it's so getting direct feedback from growers every day.
Yeah, and like I've got Blueprint Cannabis. They do a lot of our R&D testing. We've got, you know, Preferred Gardens. We've got Anna over at Cam. We've got Green. I mean, just all these great cultivators that we can run into at, you know, at the hydro store, because it's just like
Yeah,
that tight knit of a community. We get feedback from them all the time, and we love it. Like it's just a great place to be. We get immediate feedback, and And
That's
in
it.
Sacramento, man, they're gonna tell you if your shit stinks. Like they're
Yeah.
gonna they're not gonna sugarcoat it. That's not what this that's not what this community is about. This grower community is really about helping each other, and they'll tell you when your shit stinks, and that's
I went
honestly the
I went
best
to
I've ever had.
the customer appreciation dinner at Indoor Sun, and
Yeah,
there is a lot of cultivation, and they're sharing, and it's actually pretty awesome. So it's nice to see vibrant, aggressive growth of cultivators in a certain region. So
yeah.
I that was my takeaway from Sacramento. So
Yeah, I feel very lucky to be here and to have like my roots here, and it's again, I'm just extremely lucky to be here. I love it. It's a great spot.
yeah, it is. Let's go with some questions. Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
Sarah is going to ask questions.
We had a whole bunch at the beginning, so
One
just
was, is it better to put it on the side or the bottom?
For side, what's better, Tim? Side lighting or direct canopy?
So both have their applications. Side lighting is really going to hit your like two outside rows. So side lighting is definitely applicable. For the best return on investment, under canopy lighting is going to be your first step, and then most people step into side lighting. If you go visit our profile, we actually just posted something with Bear Cannabis. He's not in Sacramento, he's in Redding. He was one of our first testers. The guy's a crusher, but he has a side lighting. He's got a side lighting test going on too, and he's been running it for about a year. And we asked him, we were like, side lighting or under canopy? And he was like, under canopy first, get your ROI, then invest into side canopy. So that's the best application.
Cool.
okay. Next question. Do you have to calculate your under canopy lights into your DLI?
Yeah, you should. If you already understand your DLI, adding that is very good because there are people that are a few growers that are really in tune with their DLI, and they're starting to run 11 hours of lights on and 13 hours of lights off. We do not recommend either or 12/12 or 11/13, but if you're kind of maxing out that DLI within 11 hours, that 12th hours is kind of stressful for the plant. So if you know how to calculate your DLI, you're comfortable with it, I would definitely try a run where you're going 11/13, or you go 11/13, 11 hours on, 13 hours off. When you get to bulking and you've really established those plants, you can kind of switch that and see if you can shave off an hour of light a day and still get the same return. It's similar to what we were talking in the beginning, reducing your intensity up top and adding under canopy. It's kind of the same thing. In many ways, it's the same thing. So I firmly believe that if you're really trying to crush it, you understand your DLI, it's definitely the place to go.
For those that don't know, what DLI? Just a quick.
Your daily light integral, it's basically how much light your plants are receiving over the course of a 12-hour day or 18 hours, or if you're in veg flower. So it's taking your micromoles and doing some math on how many hours they're receiving that amount of micromoles and kind of working backwards to how much that DLI is. So
Perfect.
if you just type in DLI on ChatGPT, it'll do it all for you. There's a
I have
little.
a question. I'm not sure if this is I even understand what it is, but it says how many per 4x4 is the best two lights. I'm not sure if they mean how many under canopy lights for each 4x4.
Yeah, that's what this sounds like to me. So you can run 2 or 3 per 4x4. The Faven design has a nice bubble lens on it, and that lens is really meant to throw the light in a pattern that is, you know, in a pattern that matches the under canopy of a plant. So if we just had a flat top and we were beaming straight up, so if you have a flat under canopy light, that light is going straight up. There's really no curve to it, right? Your plants in your canopy has a curve, they have a curve to it. So if you've got Favens, you have this great lens, and so you really should only have to run 2 per 4x4. That's the idea. That's why we added the diffusion. That's why we added the curved bubble lens. That's why our body is a little wider than most, because it takes up the space and throws the light better. So I prefer 2. If you want to run 3, it's not terrible. If your plants can handle it, then you're good. If your HVAC can handle it, that's great. But I prefer 2 myself.
I've got 5x6 and I've got 2, and they You can see you can see the light above. You can see the light from all angles. I don't like to have overly crowded. Like I said,
Yeah.
spacing is everything to me.
And something, if you wanted to play around with, we're playing around with perpendicular now. So we're running, most people are running 2 rows of lights lengthwise on their benches.
Yeah.
But you can actually turn those sideways, use jumper cables, and put a light in between each plant, depending on your planting density. And that's actually showing a little better coverage than running them parallel. So we have a bunch of side-by-side trials going on now at Blueprint with the 2.0s and seeing which style fits better. And it really comes down to how big of plants you grow and how big your planting or how large your planting density is. So it's going to be cultivator specific, but that is a really great application if you're looking for a little better coverage. And there is less light loss as well, because if you turn the bar perpendicular, that light is just throwing itself onto the next plant. Where if you're running them parallel, that light can be lost out of the sides of the table. It's not much. It's very, very marginal. But if you want to look at that, ROI over the long period of time, that perpendicular style may be really good for a lot of cultivators.
Cool.
Okay, next question. Can you lower the intensity of the overhead light under canopy light?
Definitely. I wouldn't do it with an HPS because you want to get the full spectral output of an HPS light. Like dimming HPS, you're really taking away a lot of the power of the HPS. LEDs though, 100%. If you're strapped for power, I mean, we have guys in LA that are in downtown LA that are taking down top lights so they can add under canopies because it's that much better. If you're on that power constraint, most definitely you can reduce your top light to match the 120 watts per bar that you're adding of under canopy. And we've seen almost no reduction in yield by doing that. We've seen the same yield increase when you decrease your top light and your bottom. So
I 100% agree with not dimming HPS. It becomes more of a monochrome, 99% red, but you will take away all the potential the other HPS. I couldn't agree more.
yeah, and if you want to dim your HPS, you can, but I've had a lot more issues with dimming HPS than dimming LED. HPS are meant to run full bore 100% all times.
If not, a higher microfarad capacitor like school.
Yeah.
To push them a little farther.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. Any other questions? Any questions on that?
I still got more.
Oh, good. Let's keep going.
Okay. Is the under light spectrum different?
Yeah, so we have 2 different spectrums, and then off spectrum tuning coming out in 2.0 chroma. That's going to be Q2, probably Mayish, late April, May. And so we've got 2 different spectrum. One's meant to pair with HPS. That's our R6 model, and then we've got the R8, which is what is in this grow, which is a little more red, and that pairs up with the full spectrum LED top light.
Okay, and continuing with the spectrum, what spectrum is best for under canopy light to improve lower bud effectiveness?
So, I like the R6 under HPS settings. I do. I love it. If you want to push the R8 in an HPS setting, you're more than it's not detrimental to use it. It's more of the choice. That's why we have the 2 spectrums. It's for cultivators to choose. So if you want to run the R8 and HPS, that's fine. I side with the R6. That's just I think the cannabinoid production is greater. I think the yield production is equivalent to R8. So it's not really that. It's more just the quality. But that is completely subjective. That's a tough question to answer. But if you're hesitant, just go with the R8. The R8's never gonna fail you. It's a killer spectrum.
I got a strange question. Me personally.
Yeah.
Is there a decrease in insects having light down low?
Yeah, you're kind of eliminating any places for them to hide. So as long as you don't overcrowd your plants and you prioritize airflow by, making sure you do a strategic de-leaf and open up your plants, it's very much, I can't claim that it reduces insects, but it definitely reduces the place for them to lay eggs or kind of hide from your IPM sprays, right? They want to be in a more shaded, away from the high intensity lights. So if you take that away from them by adding under canopy lights, not much there. Same thing with powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is going to show up in an area of low airflow and low light. It's never going to show on your top bud first. It's always going to start on the side and kind of make its way up as it fruits, right? Because once you see PM, it's fruiting, and game's kind of over. So yeah, it really reduces. It does reduce it. I can't say it absolutely eliminates. I can't make those claims as the owner. But it's definitely something we see in the field.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, we got another one. How do I position under canopy lights to avoid light burn or wasted energy? Placement strategy.
Yeah, so you're not going to get light burn unless you have a bud directly laying on your light. I mean, it can be within a half inch and you're going to have no light burn. There are some plants that are a little more light sensitive than others. The best way to do that is to lower your first trellis to about 2 to 4 inches off of your light. If you can get your first trellis all the way down there, you're going to eliminate you know, any kind of droopy bud or any branch that's a little weaker, but all of a sudden has these massive buds on it because of the under canopy light. You're really it's just like securing your top buds, right? You're gonna secure them in place so they won't droop. So that's how you eliminate any burn. And then any added stress, just don't ramp intensity too fast. There's no race to 100% intensity. Sometimes I don't even get to 100% intensity. I just watch the plants, watch them react, and I'm like, okay, we're good. So that's what we would say. Like, that's the best position for them. The best position for you is going to be what works in your facility the best. And, a lot of times that's just simply, an adjustable stand at 8, 10, or 12 inches. And depending on your plant height, you raise it or lower it as you need. So that's the best way to like mitigate any kind of any stressors there, is to lower your first trellis so you support those branches that you used to underclear and you don't anymore. And then making sure you're not ramping intensity too fast.
Cool.
Okay, next question. What's the difference between craft farmer, Faven, and just ordinary China LED lighting?
So, I've been doing under canopy for 5 years now. Like this Faven unit, this design, it comes from years of running janky lights underneath the canopy that weren't meant to be there. So the Faven design comes from the issues I've run into, the benefits I've seen from it, everything down to why we diffuse the lens, why we put a curve on it, why we have it the length we have it, everything. So our design is purely based on 5 years of commercial side-by-side trials and just experience in the field. And then the LED goes back to the LEDs, the diodes themselves goes back to my time at UC Davis and getting introduced to them there. So our design is, it's superior because it's all I've been doing for the last 5 years, right? This isn't something new to me. This is just like, this is the hard work and the lessons that I've learned. So that's the big difference is that, and you're getting amazing customer support because I've got a great team. I've got fulfillment specialists. We've got media marketing, but our best asset is our grow support. So if you're having any issues, you can call us 7 days a week, email us 7 days a week. We're going to get on the phone with you. We're going to get on an email with you and make sure we support you through, integrating this into your grow. We're here. We're all growers. Like my whole grow team, like when they take a call, they're probably stepping out of a grow room. Like we're all growers. We all understand that if you have a question or it's like Friday at 4 o'clock and you got to leave in a half hour and it's, we got Valentine's Day this Friday and you've got something going on, you need a question, like call us, we're here. So
by the way,
what's that?
First question is you were the first to do under canopy lighting.
It's hard to say first. We were the first ones to truly understand what the plants needed. There were companies before us, like there was actually a company going after a patent for it for a while, but it failed because you can't patent the location of a light. It's kind of tricky. But I worked with all those units. Like I worked with that company to try to get them up to speed, and they were just lighting engineers, which nothing on lighting engineers. We all need them, but the difference is I'm a grower and I understand what growers need. And, you know, I can talk to the lighting engineers, really come up with the best plan that meets both the needs of like efficiency and LED technology and being cutting edge, and also just like having a great tool for every grower. So I never will say it's like this, it's like saying who snowboarded first. It's really, really tough, you know, but somebody ripped the water ski off and put it on the snow.
No, really, you make an important point. We have seen brands of LEDs in this industry,
Yeah.
like, so many. Lux isn't here, and, huge brands changed ownerships. So many companies have come and gone.
Yep.
And at Green Planet, obviously, we're your Canadian distributor, but it's really, really have a brand or an alliance with someone that is going to back warranty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And like,
super
you know,
important.
my business partner in this, like we're bootstrapped. We don't have investors. It's me and my business partner who's been in this. You're familiar with him. You've been in business with him for years.
Yeah.
You know, he's been in hydro for 15 years. Like this, you know, Faven may be new, but our our core and our the base is we're positioned to be here for a very long time. You know, so we're not doing this isn't something quick and fast. Like I'm really excited that this door opened with Under Canopy for us to step through that door and really be able to bring good products to market for growers. Like that's like the best. That's the best feeling. So we have a 5-year warranty. We're going to be around in 5 years. Like I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, well, that's that assures us as your and they I know how important those warranties. There's nothing
Yeah.
worse that as a distributor, all of a sudden that company is no longer around. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen it. You know, we've lived it as growers. Like we know what it's like when that company's gone, and then you're like, well,
yeah,
cool. You know, so this is like I think in cannabis you get really one shot, dude. Like if you kind of like if you turn on the community, like they're gonna bring their pitchforks out, you know. So you really got to be outstanding, and honestly, to make waves in this industry that's dominated by billion-dollar like $100 million lighting companies, and just to be a startup like we are, you know, we really have to be about our customer service and our long-term success of the customer, and that's I have it written on my board. It's long-term goals, and it's top is provide excellent customer service. It's and next one is provide quality equipment. Like it's like those are our brand values written on my wall that I stare at all day.
but it is that simple, right?
Yeah,
Keep
it's
me happy. I go to a experience. I hate it. I look them in the eye and I'm like, policy. You just want to make. I'm going to leave here unhappy.
yeah, exactly. Well, and it's just like things go wrong in grows, you know, that's why customer service has to be there. Like we have to be able to have great customer service because things just go wrong, you know, and we really wish it didn't happen, but you know, it's it's every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday. There's gonna be something that goes wrong. So if you need to get on the call with us, if you have something happen, like just give us a ring. Like we're here to make sure you guys have the best success. It's you know your success, our success. I've been a grower my entire adult life. It's all I've done. Um, and I just that it's just very nice to be able to help growers. It's a cool position to be in.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, next question. Will adding under canopy lighting impact my plant nutrient or water needs? Adjustments to feeding.
It would be a question.
Very good question. Yes. So, whenever you increase the demand you're placing on your plant, whether through light, through environment, doesn't matter, you're going to have to meet those needs with resources. Those resources are water and food, okay? So, when you add under canopy to your room, a very average water consumption increase is about 10%. I've seen more, I've seen 0%. But 10% you can pretty much guarantee that's going to be there. If you have substrate monitors, very, very easy to manage. It's not that extreme. You just send an extra P2 shot or push out your P2 shot, or you do a little extra on your P1 initial, you know, on your initial irrigation events. Food is a little trickier because it really depends on the whole environment, but again, about a 10% increase. So if you're feeding at like a 2.8, like a 2.7, a 2 or 2.8, you can probably bump up to a 3.0 and not see any toxicity issues, not see any like difference in quality. I very much am a feed at a lower EC type of guy. With under canopy, we have had to increase that a little bit. So it's very facility specific. Water is kind of constant. If you add demand, you're going to have to water it a little more. That's constant. Food is just different. You could already be feeding enough. And then we see it a little more when you add LEDs to an HPS room. But if you add under canopy LEDs to an LED room, not so much. So just something to keep in mind. Every facility is different, but great question.
Yeah.
Okay. Does under canopy lighting reduce large in strains like Skywalker or strain specific results?
You cut out a little bit. I heard Skywalker and like, I'm going to assume like sour diesel or something.
Yeah, they're asking if it decreases larf.
Yeah, LARF. I know you've been growing for a long time because you use LARF. That's an old school term, right on. We usually say smalls or micros or Bs, whatever. Most definitely, most definitely. You're really like instead of having to, I think candy is probably your biggest. It's everybody's, the thing they have to grow the most. To get a good yield return on candies, you have to underclear a lot. You have to remove a lot of that lower, almost half of the plant. Like I'll just say bottom third, just for conversational purposes. But you know, you're adding that light down there, and all that used to be larf and just never got dense, never got mature, and had to either be taken to fresh frozen or just put in pre-rolls or whatever. That's all becoming grade A bud that can go in the same bag as your tops and your neck bones. Like all of that can go into one now, and that really helps. Like not only yield increase, but just sales velocity. Like it's a competitive market. If you have a bag or a consistent product, people are going to come back to you more often and they're going to buy quicker and they're not even going to hesitate. So if you have a bag that checks all the boxes every single time because you're running a great facility and you've added under canopy, it's pretty hard to argue that. So yes, it does reduce larf and smalls. We like to be around a 5% smalls average after all said and done.
Okay. There was a couple questions I went through. We've already gone over. So the next question is, okay, so it means that if I dim top light, will it reduce the temp in a tent since Favens run cool?
Yeah, definitely. So Favens, I'll just address the temperature thing. Favens run like you can put your hand on them at 100%. They take about 40 minutes to reach their highest temperature. So if you ever want to test them, leave them on for 40 minutes. Boom, that's as hot as they're going to get. So we run about 10 degrees cooler than everybody on the market, 5 degrees Celsius for everybody that's running Celsius. So yeah, if you're dealing with temperature issues in a small area like a tent, you can reduce that top lighting intensity and add under canopy, and you're still going to see a great yield increase, like pretty in line with a standard increase of 20, 25%. So that's a great way to mitigate any environmental changes, whether you're small 2 light tent or a 200 light room. Reducing that top light intensity is a really good way of applying under canopy lights without having your environment get too out of line for whatever capacity you already have installed.
Okay. I don't know if this is a comment or a question. So you're suggesting to use it with a controller then?
Yeah, I like using them with a controller. I like dimming. I'm like there's kind of two groups of growers. There's like hot and heavy, like fast, make the changes quickly, and then there's slow and low. I'm very much in the slow and low category. If you prefer to turn them on 100% instead of like dimming them with a controller and you just want to have them on an analog timer, that's totally fine. I would turn them on a little later in flower, like after day like 14, 15, 16 is probably a good time. Make sure they're really established, and make sure you're okay with like the vertical stretch of them stopping, because if you turn them on 100%, you're going to pull that lever and those plants are going to stop stretching. So you can actually use that to your benefit if you need it. We do have a mini controller that is just a 0 to 10 volt controller, a little handheld. It's like $40 or something. It plugs right into the female RJ communication line that comes on your Faven power cord. And so you can have your Favens attached to your wall timer, like an analog standard timer, and you can control your dimming with that controller. Super simple. It saves you money from having to buy another, $300 controller setup. So we've got them. I'm pretty sure we just sent you guys some too. So that's a great option, great budget option. But I mean, I play around with that in big cultivations where strains are a little more sensitive to light, and it works out great.
Okay. What spectrums do the lights work at when you're running without a controller?
They're going to be your standard spectrum. It's an LED, so it dims down the intensity. It doesn't manipulate spectrum. So you can run at 50%. It's still the same spectrum. It's just less intensity.
Okay. How much heat is added to the room that you have to add cooler air?
So this is a tricky question because standard watt to BTU is going to be 3.4 BTUs per watt. That's great. And I think that's something that is very standard and you should practice that. What's different about under canopy is the location of that heat and how minimal that heat is because of the design of the Faven unit. Massive heat sink, all our internals are aluminum, so it's really helping disperse that evenly. But the location of the light is really interesting because yes, you're adding it to the overall room, but the bottom third of your plant is historically the coolest and the wettest area in your room. So you're adding a little bit of heat to an already cooler area. So a lot of times we see growers add these. Had a guy around the corner add 420 of 22 to a room. He's got 210 top lights in a room, all HPS. He added 400 and something Favens and had no issue because he's running these bigger plants and he's got a ton of transpiration already. And that transpiration, the location of the light being close to the gas exchange just zapped that extra heat, So it's not going to happen in every grow. I'm not saying you don't need to add capacity, but the location of the heat really makes this a tricky question. And it really depends on, I kind of start the conversation with cultivators who ask me that are implementing. They're like, my first question is, how close to the line are you already? Like, is your HVAC maxed out or do you have extra capacity? If you have extra capacity, you're probably okay. If you're already maxed out, I would suggest making some changes before adding under canopy because no amount of light is going to help you get over a bad environment. That's bar none. I don't want to sell you a light that's going to screw up your environment.
Advice.
Yeah.
Advice. Do you find that having the light down low, this is going into like a tech question, but having the heat down low and actually creating a convection, heat pulling up through the light, does that play a role at all?
So you're talking the stratification of temperature, right?
Yeah.
And like how much these plants love a consistent temperature and VPD, right? So yes, I firmly believe that having a little bit of heat down there, especially in greenhouse setups,
Yeah.
having a little bit of heat down there is actually benefiting the plant and making it way more efficient because you don't have this difference of VPD from the top to the bottom. We measure VPD 1 foot off canopy. Well, we don't measure underneath the plant, So what is that? And if you have a big enough plant and you've got, maybe some limited airflow, you've got a big difference and that plant is struggling at some point in that variance. So yeah, uniformity of temperature and VPD is a huge one. And I do firmly believe that a little bit of heat actually helps that out.
Okay, I think we have one more question. How do you calculate your DLI? Do you take an average from both lights?
I would pick a point in your plant in the under canopy and test that. And then obviously pick a point in in the top of your canopy and take that. You can average them. That would probably be the best way to go about it. It's going to be facility to facility and setup to setup. It's going to be different. But that would be my recommendation, to kind of pick an overall point of like, okay, this is good representation of the under canopy and a good representation of the top. Because the idea is to holistically light the plant, to light it in its entirety. So you don't want to push 1400 up top and 500 below or 400 below. You want to, my goal is to always do 1/3 of the overall intensity from the under canopy and 2/3 from the top. I think that's a really good place to be. So if you can do that in your micromoles and measure those micromoles and then figure out your DLI from there, I think that's the best spot. So to wrap up, yes, kind of average them together and just make sure that you're not overdoing it on your top. Rather see more come from the bottom. Sorry, 1/3 of that intensity come from the bottom and 2/3 from the top. So that would be, 500 in the lower canopy and 1,000 up top. That's a very, very nice place to be, a good range to be within.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap this up pretty quickly here, but we're going to do the swag.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go with the question. I like the tree question. I love the DLI question. They're really important. Tim, I really appreciate you. And I really, if you have any interest in any companies or any other, I'd love to reach out to the manufacturers like you did here. And it doesn't matter if we distribute the product or not. It's a forum to come together as a community and learn together. Tim, super grateful for you to such valuable information.
Right on. Appreciate your time. Great idea, man. I'm glad you reached out for this. This was awesome. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, Tim.
Later.
Sure.
Did you want to go over?
Yeah, so swag gift. We're going to give away Rivulus. I really like these. These are a nice new drip emitter. I talked about them on the last channel. I'm just going to give you a stack of those. You're going to get a flag, a hoodie, some Bokashi.
Nope, jersey.
Jersey, a hat. It's every swag bit. A toque, shot glass, medtainer, fish shit,
Bokashi.
some dents. I believe there's some cargo in there. You're getting basically a little bit of everything. And if you're, thank you so much for tuning in.
And we're going to be doing this every week.
And we're going to do this every week, and we'll be letting people know what day it's going to be. And I would love to find out topics. Any topics you have or are interested in, we would love to know so we can do a better job and inform you and give you information directly from the expert. Thanks for tuning in, and happy growing.